Welcome everybody, I'm just about to start the Facebook stream. We'll just give it a few seconds for this to begin. Welcome everybody, I'm just about to start the Facebook stream. We'll just give it a few seconds for this to begin. Alright, welcome to Crafters Tavern number 23. I am broadcasting live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and also Periscope, which is part of Twitter. So anyone who's joining us now, thank you very much for joining us. And of course, you can join me live on the show by going to appear.in/the DMG info. So you can see that here on the side just next to me there. Well, this side. So appear.in/the DMG info. So hello from Canada, welcome. Yeah, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comment section, and I will attempt to answer them. Hello Highland Guard and Artistic Colossus, who has joined us once again. Alrighty. So there's a lot that's been happening in the crafting community. Lots of channels have grown. Welcome, thank you for joining us, Eric. Lots of channels have grown. I would just like to congratulate Black Magic Craft, who is rapidly approaching 20,000 subscribers. That's a great effort, and he is a wonderful channel that I suggest you check out if you have not checked out before. Some of the other channels, I've been meaning to do my Feature Friday on Quasi's Bell, which is a great little channel. I've spoken about him once or twice on the show before. And there's obviously a few more people that are starting to do Twitch offerings as well. Obviously myself, I'm just broadcasting this. But what I do plan to do is, when I'm actually filming my videos, I will broadcast the actual construction on Twitch as well. So occasionally on Twitch, I will actually be broadcasting the unedited construction of things that will basically eventually be videos on my channel. I have been a little bit lax in the crafting videos, and I apologize for that. I've been extremely busy with my company, and so I have had very little time to devote to this channel. If you join me on the 7D System channel, you'll also notice the videos have been a little bit light there as well, other than the weekly patron game that I run. But things are going to increase. The big project I've been working on has settled down, so I will be able to devote more time to these videos. So this is Crafters Tavern, which is on the 4th Thursday of every month at 8 p.m. Eastern. So if you are wanting to join us in the future, you're watching this sometime in the past, you can, of course, join us on the 4th Thursday of, what am I saying, 4th Thursday? The 4th Friday, the 4th Friday of every month at 8 p.m. Eastern, which is a Saturday morning for me in Australia. So if you're in Australia, you've got to work out the times. You've got to take into account things like daylight savings and so on and so forth. So once again, if you have any questions in the chat, Theodore Warman, thank you for joining us. You can, of course, place your questions in the chat. And if you want to join me live, you can go to appear.in/the DMG info. And then you will appear in this bottom box over here. Ooh, 2 webcams. Very confusing. Oh, it's someone from Argentina. Pablo, thank you for joining us all the way from Argentina. Okay, so there are a variety of things that we can talk about. But one of the things, I was watching Jeremy's Black Magic Crafts video where he was introducing a small table saw, into his crafting. And I was wondering, from anybody who's watching, if anyone has used something like that to cut cardboard. Now, I've never used a table saw in my life. I have an understanding of how they work. I assume that they're for cutting more rigid materials, but I would like to know whether you can actually use something like that to cut double layer or single layer corrugated cardboard. I assume it would, but there may be fire dangers or something to that effect that I'm not aware of, and I would just like to find out from anybody in the chat or anybody who wishes to join me live whether you can use one of those small table saws. I think he was using a Proxon, so whether it will actually cut cardboard. Yeah, it's one of these strange things when you start to see tools that other people are using and techniques that other people are using that you haven't experimented with yourself, and you just basically want to discover more about those things before you take some kind of leap or investment. I bought a Dremel tool about a year and a half ago that I've actually not used yet. There's a lot of things I wanted to do with them, but all those projects were shelved for time purposes. And I've, I have used a Dremel tool before, but I have not used my own Dremel tool, which is sitting on the shelf behind me. Yeah, so the normal size table saw, yeah, but a normal size table saw obviously is big and the blades are quite large, so I would assume that that's just going to tear everything. But the small table saw, if you have a look at his pit trap videos that he's just started doing, he uses a small table saw in that, and it's a really, really small one. And I think it's the plate that it's on is only a few inches wide, and it's got a very small little blade. So I'm assuming that being smaller is not going to tear as much. But yeah, a larger one, basically because it's obviously designed to cut huge pieces of wood. But that's what I'm interested in. Yeah, Proxon is the hot wire table for foam work, but they also make from what I remember, they also make a mini table saw as well, specifically for hobbies. So it's designed specifically for really small, intricate things. It's, yeah, I mean that. So if you were cutting sheets of plastic or something to do plaster card buildings or something to that effect, it would be used for them. Yeah, Proxon did give him a ton of tools. The benefits of finding a good product and having the company behind you, behind that, give you stuff to present, which obviously he can then use in his craft as well. Of course, all of that is available if you go onto his website or you go into his videos. There's links there to his affiliate store where you can buy all of those products through Amazon. Micromark makes a great one for small workbench projects as well. Okay, that's pretty cool. Again, I know nothing about table saws, so everything you tell me here I have to take at face value. So if anyone else has any brands or anything that they've heard of, please feel free to mention those. So the comments are being burnt into the video, so later watchers will actually be able to view it. Playfair, haven't seen that video yet. I'm not giving anything away other than the fact that he's using a mini table saw. All right, so what else have we got? Right, so there's DM Scotty's been working on projects related to ICRPG from Drunken and Dragons. ICRPG obviously went platinum on Drive-Thru RPG. There's a lot of RPGs is what I'm saying. So Hanker Infernail's fantastic game. I'll just grab the book. That's the cover, ICRPG. index card role-playing game. There is... This is Core, referred to as Core, and I'd also like to thank him for actually mentioning some of the community in the thanks box at the front there. So he does mention Black Magic Craft, myself, and DM Scotty, and a few others. So I thank him for that. This is a wonderful, wonderful product. If you're looking for a light game that's easy to run, yeah, I highly suggest you go and pick this up. And you can get PDF PDF copies. These are this is the original hard version, but the PDFs he keeps updating. So new versions of the PDF, you don't need to rebuy them. He basically just updates, and your purchase gets updated if you purchase prior to that. So really, really cool little game. DM Scotty is starting to do some monsters and things out of that. So I suggest you take a gander at this. Yeah, table saws are easy to use. Just remember to watch where your fingers are to the blade. Absolutely. Yeah, RPGs are great, tabletop, video game, or otherwise. My entire life revolves around those sort of things. I love the whole idea of the dungeon crawl, Diablo, wizardry, Final Fantasy, you know, all that kind of RPG or RPG things going all the way back to Ultima, and Lands of Lore was a favorite of mine. I liked Lands of Lore as a computer game. Some of the old ones, they never used to have a map, so you used to sit there and actually draw the map. And I actually used to enjoy drawing the maps for games. I actually find it a bit of a letdown that modern games, they include the mini map, because to me, I think it actually takes away from the game, because you're constantly looking at the mini map rather than what you're actually doing on the screen. And that's for anything. It doesn't necessarily need to be an RPG. I think, you know, they spend so much money on the environment in games like Far Cry and these sort of things, and then you get stuck on the mini-map and you're looking at the mini-map and you're not observing the millions of dollars worth of fancy graphics that they've spent money on. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of there being no map, and you have to make your own map. Obviously, that becomes difficult in games where it's randomly regenerated every time. But, you know, if you're going to put the time and effort into a game, I like doing maps, because then you know, the old school, when you used to play ZX Spectrum games and you used to have your code sheet, you have to work out codes and things, and, you know, drawing maps and, you know, figuring out monster stats so you could defeat them. I think that's an element of computer gaming that has actually been lost, which I really enjoyed. But I may be I may be the only person in that category. Yeah, I agree completely. It takes all the explorer thrills and throws them out the damn window. Exactly. It's like, why create an environment to explore when you get given a fully realized map? There was a game, one of the early 3D games, where it actually went true three-dimensional, where you could actually do a Z-axis, and you flew around in these caves with this spacecraft. I can't remember what it was called, but that was a very weird experience, because obviously everything else before then was, you know, top-down 2D or, you know, 3D, but you're all at one level. And then this thing was fully 3D. And so you had to think three-dimensionally in order to figure out where you were. And that had no map, because the map would have been very difficult to do. I can't remember. I think it was Descent. I'm not sure. But that was cool, because you really had to sort of stop and go, okay, now where the hell am I? How the hell am I going to get out of here? which adds a whole new level to the experience. Yeah, so I'm new here. Anybody use hexagonal maps or maps anymore? There's plenty of people who use hexagonal maps. There's not a lot of people who craft hexagonal tiles, so there are a handful of people who have done it. There's a whole lot of logistical and measurement issues that come into play when you bring in hex, especially when you're flowing details from one to another, because you can begin to rotate things and then that doesn't rotate very well, and you start to then have problems with things not ending in the right places. Walls, having straight walls is a problem. Yeah, there's a variety of problems with doing hexagonal tiles, but obviously hexagonal maps, there are a variety of games that do use hexagonal maps. Yeah, that's personal taste. There's a lot of people who swear by and will die by hexagonal. I'm not one of those people, because I don't even use grids at all. So, yeah, that's personal preference, really. 2 GMGs for the price of 1. Now, if anybody does want to join me, you can by going to appear.in/the DMG info, and you can actually join this chat live. So obviously we're only about 10-15 minutes into this broadcast, but I'd like to thank everybody who is actually already with us, who's joining us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and I think there's one person on Twitch at the moment as well. Unfortunately, I cannot follow the Facebook comments if there are any, because the program that I use does not integrate with Facebook, which is not a problem with the program. It is a problem with Facebook. As with anything, they do their own thing. So if I'm missing out on comments on Facebook, I apologize. I'll probably reply to them after the broadcast. Okay, do you have any experience with resin casting? If not, is it something you're interested in? I have a very small amount of experience in resin casting. It's, to me, I like the idea of creating an object which then I can make more copies of. So the thing that interests me is the creation of the original thing. The casting, I'm not so interested in, because sometimes I also like the individuality of pieces. Which you obviously then have to modify the cast. So if I were going to do a lot more casting, whether it be resin or anything else, I would rather do pieces, modular pieces, that I can then create different things from those pieces. So for instance, if you follow the DM Scotty Facebook page, you might have seen some of the live broadcasts by the guys who make buildings and things, and they use like pre-made windows and pre-made doors and things like that. So that's very useful, but I would like to go to another extreme, which is rather than actual objects, rather create components. So like wooden slats or like 2x4s, mini 2x4s. So you've got like, you've basically cast these pieces of wood which you can then use to create all the things that you need, or creating cogs, window frames, glass if you were going to cast in clear resin, so glass for the windows. You could then also do stained glass as well. So I like the idea of doing components. It was pretty much like the old days when you used to be able to buy Warhammer bits. So you, in their catalog, you could actually just buy heads and swords and guns and all that kind of stuff from Games Workshop. They recently, DM Scotty posted on Facebook, where you can actually buy a box of skulls. Not just one type of skull, there's a whole range of different skulls, which of course for what the kind of stuff that we do is really, really useful. And I'd like to see more of that come back. And of course, with the advent of 3D printing, you can actually do that. For me, to get into 3D printing, I'd prefer it to be a higher resolution than what it is now. Of course, the higher resolution printers are extremely expensive at this point. The lower resolution ones are reasonably priced. If you want to mess around with 3D printing, it's very affordable now. But I was the same with photography. I didn't want to start getting into photography until it was purely digital. So I only got into photography once SLRs went digital. Everything else was, I didn't want to mess around with film. To me, although I can appreciate the artistry and the science and all that sort of thing behind actually developing film and the different feel and look and whatever, as you know from watching my channel, I'm not a guy who likes to sit around waiting for things. So the immediacy of digital is what I prefer, and that's the kind of thing that if I'm gonna get a 3D printer, I want it to be fast. I don't want to wait 2 days for a model to print out, or for 6 hours or something like that. I'd want it to be almost as fast as a printer, a 2D printer that we use now. And I don't think we're very fast. We're very far off from that. I've seen I've seen 3D printers that print almost that quickly. They'll print an entire thing this big in the space of 5 minutes. So that can be done. Those are extremely expensive pieces of equipment, but as with most things, as it becomes more widely available, it will come in. So someone has joined us. They're just waiting. Obviously, they need to turn on their camera and their microphone, and then they'll be able to be in the chat with us. So worth it over crafting each piece from scratch? Yes, to that extent, if you're going to do huge volumes of things. But I'm not a person who does huge volumes of things. I'll just, I'll make 2 tables and just reuse them. I'll make different types of tables. If I was going to produce more tables, I would just produce different kinds. So to that extent, yes, casting, if you're going to do a lot of the same thing, absolutely. But again, if you're going to do individualized things, then rather you would want to cast table legs, tabletops, chair tops, whatever, and you can then modify it as you see fit. So give each piece an individual feel to it. So backing up for a second, honestly, if you're building scale models, dioramas, tile setups, or battle table ready sets, a mini chopper or micro table saw are very good tools to have in your shop. Absolutely. If that's what you're into, if you're into dioramas and model railroads, all that kind of thing, where you're dealing with a large volume of material that needs to be cut to straight, it needs to be cut straight and all that kind of thing, then yes. Band saws are also very good. A friend of mine does 1:6 scale miniatures. I keep telling him he needs to start a YouTube channel, and he keeps refusing. He's got a huge collection of 1:6 scale military miniatures, and he builds guardhouses and crates and all this sort of stuff. That, he has crates for storing all the weapons. He's got thousands of different types of guns and all that kind of thing. And yeah, he uses a bandsaw for that, which is also very, very useful. So I would liken that to a laser cutter. Something I'm very interested in procuring is a laser cutter. Of course, they are also not cheap unless you get a second-hand one. And there's a lot you can do with a laser cutter in terms of design on the computer and spit it out through the laser cutter machine, which is essentially a box that you put your layer of plastic or perspex or wood or whatever into it. I think it even does cardboard and paper. I'm not 100% sure, but you, yeah, essentially then the laser cuts out your design and then you can assemble that, you know, however you wish. So that is a very useful tool, a laser cutter. Again, expensive because of the technology. So something like a bandsaw, you can get, obviously, I've seen miniature bandsaws that you can get for hobby stuff. It's the same with miniature drills, you know, pin drills and things like that for when you wanted to pin minis or bore out the barrel of a gun so that it's not just flat on the end. Yeah, you could basically build an entire workshop in miniature in order to make miniature stuff. And some of the things where you can get cool equipment like that is secondhand dentistry equipment, secondhand watchmaking and jewelry equipment. A lot of that, because it has to work with these fine details. You know, a lot of that you can find as well. Dentistry, there's a lot of equipment that is used in dentistry, especially if they do composite veneers and things like that, where they're actually generating, you know, a veneer for the teeth. There's a lot of the things that you create in the casting and so on and so forth that they use, the equipment they use in that, which can be used for other things as well. So if you hunt around and you see a dentist who's about to throw out all his equipment and spend a whole lot more money, yeah, you can really find some good equipment there. Not every dentist does that, though, so you'd have to find the ones that are more cosmetic. Let's see, have I missed any of the other questions here? Do you think the time investment of resin casting, like bookshelves or tables, is worth it? Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, if you've created several molds, so you'd have to create. You know, I mean, it depends on how many bookshelves you want. I mean, how many bookshelves do you really need? I mean, you know, my channel, I make hundreds and hundreds of books in you know, a few minutes, just by folding pieces of paper over, and then, you know, you're stacking the shelves with that, and then the bookshelves is, I mean, you're going to cast all that. The amount of time almost works out. Excuse me, almost works out to be the same. You know, it depends again on what you're up to and what you want to do. All right, so again, if anybody wants to join, just go to appear.in. So it's up there, over there. Appear.in / the DMG info. Someone has joined me, but they haven't turned their camera on, so I suggest to them, if they are watching the stream, just click the red X to go out and come back in. And if you have Chrome, use Chrome. That may be better. Firefox will work, but and Internet Explorer does work, but Chrome may be a better fit. And there's usually a little question that asks you which camera do you want to use if you've got more than one camera, or you must allow the camera and the microphone to be used as well. Alrighty. So, have I missed any other questions here? Let's go back to some of the earlier ones. Okay. I think we're caught up. So, yeah, any other questions, drop them in the comment section of wherever you are. Facebook ones I will have to get back to later. So, yes, the community is growing leaps and bounds. GM Scotty is now well over 40,000 subscribers. My channel is about to hit 17,000 subscribers. I am going to be doing the draw for, it's not really the draw, I'm going to announce the winner of my 16,000 subscriber competition very soon, and that will kick off a selection of builds based on that, and the winner will receive all the stuff that's created as the prize for the 16,000 subscriber competition. There will be a new subscriber competition going up the moment that is announced, so again, thank you for watching the channel, and thank you for being a subscriber. And thank you again for resubscribing if you were part of the deluge of lost subscribers about 2 years ago. So, if anyone doesn't know about that, the channel had 10,000 subscribers, lost them, and then has built it back up. So, it has been a long journey. A multi-speed Dremel is great. A jeweler's saw pin vise, yes. So, yeah, all these little things where people who are in sort of manufacturing, customized things, they're going to have great little tools that are extremely useful for model making, terrain building, and that sort of thing. So you can't really go wrong. And again, it's also about thinking about something maybe used for one purpose, and you may be able to use it for a completely different purpose that it wasn't even, you know, that's not the tool, that's not what the tool was originally designed for, but it will actually be useful, you know, to that. For instance, this appear.in that I'm using here, it's very useful for actually doing RPGs. If you're going to play an online game, it's very useful for that. You can have up to 8 people all at once. It's very similar to Google Plus Hangouts, but the difference is you can see everyone all at the same time rather than it just showing one person as they speak. So it's much easier for interaction and being able to see everyone and everyone's reactions all at the same time, which is very, very cool, especially when you're the dungeon master or players. You want to be able to see people's reactions. So it's a very, very cool little tool. It is free, so you can just go in and set up your own room for your party of online adventurers and have at it. Downtime Dad, thank you for joining us. Okay, Pod 6 podcast. I primarily do large-scale horror props. Any suggestions on how to create small-scale horror props for tabletop? Well, can you give me more information as to what you would do in your large scale and what you would actually want in small scale? Now, as far as horror props go, I would assume you want things like corpses and skeletons and coffins and that sort of thing, or do you more have like a psychological horror in mind, where it's more about creepiness than it is about dead things? Yeah, because obviously the two are very different and the approach is very different. You know, if you're doing more sort of the dead theme, that's more a more Halloween style, yeah, so a haunted mansion. Okay, so yeah, it's more, very much a Halloween style. Halloween is going to be, as it's obviously coming up in America and the rest of the world that does it because they feel like it. Halloween has a lot of really cool little things that you can use. I mean, that's where you're going to get your skeletons and your bats and your all that kind of stuff. As far as psychological horror goes, then it's more, there's not a lot that you're going to be creating that's going to sort of scare the crap out of people, but the situation will scare the crap out of people. So then you need to consider, you know, how do you make an empty room scary? What can you do with an empty room to make an empty room scary? So then you know, your skill then is more about talking about something on the wall. So you may want to, if you were going to do, say, the 2.5D stuff where you've got some kind of wall you can place on, or you're doing a DM Scotty's tilescapes where you can do a facade. What can you put on there? You know, if it's just like something scrawled in blood against the wall, you you know, that is where you can add a level of creepiness to it. But then it's more atmospheric. So then it's things like lighting, sound. So if you just have like an eerie sort of noise with like maybe a dripping water or something happening in the background that you're just playing on a loop, you can get sound programs like Sirenscape, which is very good. That has a lot of thematic music and thematic sound effects that you can then just play through a sound system or a wireless speaker or something to that effect to actually get the mood going. You can then also get eerie music. You could play some Kenny G. That would scare the shit out of most people. Yeah, I mean, and it's just however you want to mess with people's minds, and an empty room can then be, you know, scarier than a room that's full of clutter. But yes, people have put in the comments here, your best bet is cheap dollar store stuff, and it's definitely a good place to start. So it's for materials. So most of the time when I'm buying at a dollar store, I'm not buying it for what it is, I'm buying it for what it could be. So, you know, you might find bits of woodsies or rings or, you know, plastic toys or something that basically you're going to change into something else. Yes, Downtown Dad says, you know, fog and dark lights and all that kind of thing. Obviously, if you have that kind of equipment, you were a DJ in a past life, or you have one of the people that you know is into, you know, doing theater or something like that, you've got access to a fog machine, that'd be very, very useful. Nothing like a creepy, foggy room with eerie music and a dripping tap to scare the crap out of people, especially if you do it at like 3 in the morning. That's the best time to play games like Doom. You know, you're just sort of walking around slowly and then someone jumps out and starts shooting. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, it scares the bejeebers out of you. There's no way you're going to sleep from here on in. Yeah, the one from Syracuse had the dry ice going on its model with harpsichord music. Yep. Harpsichords can be very... again, any instrument, if played in a certain way, can bring about an emotional response. That's why music is very, very powerful. It's just problematic when you're the DM if you've got a lot of things to concentrate on, especially if you're playing a game that requires a lot of DM input and calculations and things like that. Controlling another element like music and fog machines may add to the game, but it may actually subtract from the game because you're trying too much to add theme, whereas the game itself may be losing something because you're distracted by doing those thematic things. Voice changes are very cool. If you can get a voice changer or a voice changing app on your phone to make cool vocal changes to your voice, especially if you're playing online, there's a lot of online voice changes that you can use to change the way your character sounds. That's very cool. I've seen that being used. I have human-sized zombies that surrounded the table. Why they play, and I made an... surround the table. Yeah, tiny hands reaching through the door, through the floor. That's pretty cool. Yeah, if you set up your gaming environment so when the people arrive, they get put into a certain mindset. Obviously, again, there's a lot of prep work involved in that. And, you know, that's fantastic. If you can have someone who's going to help you with, like, if you've got a spouse who's interested in doing the crafting aspect of it, but not interested in playing the game, that's one way to include them. There's, you know, if you've got kids, then it's an art project for them to help you with. There's a lot that you can do in order to expand the hobby beyond what beyond the game itself. Candlelight, 10 candles gets by on one prop gimmick. I'm not quite sure what that means. But yes, candlelight is a good one. Especially if you have candles that somehow you could extinguish them all at the same time. If you found a way, you could do a blast of air or something that extinguishes all the candles all at the same time. That's pretty cool. I'm going to play a haunted module. The gimmick is the module itself is haunted. DM set up with an electronic organ. It's like boom, boom, boom. You know, if you buy an old church with one of those massive organs in it, you know, and you use that as your house or as your gaming vault, that would be pretty cool. But those things are enormously expensive. So yeah, if you could fake it with a keyboard or something, that would be cool. But of course, the real thing is always so much better, because I don't know if you've been in an environment where one of those organs is being played. You know, it's designed to put the fear of God into you, because it's like, and it works to the way it's designed. In kayfabe turns, everyone who's played the module has died. Yeah, organ sheet music is the DM screen. So yeah, I mean, I talk about in the intro to 7D system. I talk about there's a variety of different players, and there's different people involved in the game. And one of the things I talk about is that there's musicians and artists and other people, and how do you integrate them into the game? You know, if there's a guy, because everyone has a friend who has a guitar, right? So, you know, and they like to sit in the background strumming at social gatherings. So why not use them in the game? Get them to do the tavern bardic music, or the slow sort of the slow drawl of the dungeon crawl. Yeah, there's a lot of things you can get. People who are interested in that thing, you're not only they're going to be playing in the game, they're also adding a lot of atmosphere and thematic content to it. Same thing with artists. I'm one of those people who doodles while I play, although I don't do a lot of playing. I'm mainly the DM, so, you know, one of my things I love to do is to draw while I'm playing. So you might have seen that in, like, the Tilvertonians and the things like, even though I did that after the fact, to me, there's nothing cooler than actually drawing the scene you're currently involved in. And so that's why that's in those videos. So the doodler is always, if there's a doodler in your game, always get them to share what they're drawing. So you ask them, like, oh, what do you think the monster looks like? And you give them the description, and they can draw the monster while the battle's going on. You know, it's helping to benefit the rest of the players. So you've got, again, the same reason you use terrain. You've got at least a consensus as to where things are and what things look like. Human-sized zombies are the past PCs who died from the module. Yeah, they have those flickering light bulbs that you just switch them off at the same time. Yeah, you can. But candles are cooler because it's an actual thing. And then there's, like, you know, the dread of what was that gust of wind, and why do the candles all get extinguished at the same time? Because you're playing on primal human fears of the unknown, and that's where horror gets a lot of its impetus from, is from those primal human fears. All right, once again, if you have any questions, drop them in the comment section. Of course, you can join me live at appear.in/thedmginfo, and you'll be in this square here down the bottom. Rectangle, not square. Thank you to everyone who has joined me on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Periscope, and of course Facebook, which I will respond to Facebook comments if there are any at a later stage, because they don't end up on the feed. But all the other ones, the Twitch and Twitter and Periscope will appear in the feed and are burnt into the video. Yeah, very true. Candles add an awesome element to the scene. Yeah, I mean, especially if you go that sort of whole gothic candelabra of candles, you know, with the dripping wax and the, you know, all that kind of stuff. You know, or if the players are led into the room, you know, with a single, you know, you get those little candle trays from back in the day. You know, before people had electricity, they used to have a candle tray. You lead the players down to this game room that you've created, you know, like podcasts, you know, little module he's talking about. You know, you lead the players into that. Again, you're adding an aesthetic to it. Again, you've got people like Picorni, who from Dwarven Forge, who likes to dress up as the DM, and who plays various personas through the dress up. There's people who dress as their characters in almost sort of a LARP situation when they play. I mean, there's so much that you can actually do that makes the gaming experience quite a lot of fun. But of course, you've got to have a group that's into it. You know, not everyone will want to do that. Your group as a whole would want to do it, because some people would just feel like, nah, I don't want to do that. They'll feel it's silly. And unfortunately, there are people who think things are silly, so I say go with it. Yeah, projection can be cool too. Ghosts and such, if you have an old projector you can use. Yes, there's also phone projectors. You can get small projectors that are not very expensive that actually plug into your phone. And there's laser projectors as well that also are very cool for projecting onto walls or sheets, or if you're using fog, even better, because then you can actually do the ghost things and it'll actually look like the ghost is in the fog. That you could scare the bejesus out of people, especially if it could. I think Uniden makes a laser projector that's, I think it was like around $100 or something. It's not a very high resolution one, but I mean, you don't need it for that kind of thing. It's you know, it just plugs into your phone, or Bluetooths to your phone or something to that effect, and then you can stream a video or an image projection from that. I'm not sure how good the refresh rate is on those things, but you definitely can use old overhead projectors, you know, the old ones that schools and things would be throwing out because they're all using new kinds of whiteboards and blackboards and all kinds of things that have all kinds of different electronics in them, so they might be getting rid of overhead projectors. I don't know if anyone, if you're too young and you don't know what an overhead projector is, it's basically a box with a light underneath that you put a transparent sheet over, and there's like a mirror with a lens that kind of reflects that onto the wall or the screen. And so you can actually write on it or whatever, and it just shows what you're doing on the screen. We used to use those heavily when I went to school, which was way back in the day. Way back! When the dinosaurs roamed the earth! Wish I was home to do the DM thing. I love building terrains and such. Well, you can actually do it as an online game. You know, if you look at Hanker Infernal Drunkens and Dragons, what he's doing with XSplit. Now, XSplit is the software I'm using here to do this. But XSplit allows you to basically put out this image as a web camera. So what you do is you have your normal web camera, so you can have your face in the screen like you see here with me when I'm pointing the little mouse at the bottom one there. So you can put that up in the corner, and then have a second web camera that focuses on the terrain. So then you can actually play online as you would have done in person, and you're just sharing your web camera. So it doesn't matter what you're using, whether you're using Skype or you're using Google Plus Hangouts or you're using Appearin or whatever. You can actually then show the terrain, and you as the DM move everything around. So the players get the experience of playing on terrain while not actually having to physically be in the same room with you. And of course, if you really want to go to the nth degree and you have multiple cameras, then you can, of course, do different angles. You can do dice rolling camera. You can do all these kind of things, which is a lot of things that I'm experimenting with at the moment for live games. If you watch some of the stuff on my 70 System channel, you'll see some of the stuff that I've been experimenting with in terms of live games, because I run a weekly game for my patrons, and you'll see them see that on there. We do this huge Halloween party in an abandoned house that I own. It's a running gag that I'm a killer DM, and then the characters die. I make a life-size zombie version and sit at the table. Oh, man. Oh, that would be fun. Those old canisters that had cutouts of things and a light source inside and spun were cool. Yeah, you know, there's been a lot of different projection technology that dates back to before film, even. Zoetropes were one of them, I think they were called. You know, there's Zoetrope was the spinning like cylinder, and you looked in one side, and then there was a little thing. You know, the image was cards that it just flicked the cards past you very, very quickly, so it looked like something was running or jumping or doing whatever. I think that's what a zoetrope was. I have to look back at my film history, but things like that. You know, they've been, you know, shadow puppetry is another one. So you can use your crafting skills to create cardboard cutouts of figures and things. So you meet a guy in the street, and you can then, you know, coming across the screen is the silhouette of a thief, you know, and you're basically just have a light that you're just, you know, doing the shadow puppetry on the wall. And then, you know, the monster attacks and you hold up the head of a Tarrasque, you know, this thing's coming for you. You know, there's so many different things you can do. And then, you know, when the thing attacks and it bites you, you drop some red cellophane in front of the light so everything goes red. You can change the colors of the lighting in the room. Man, the list of stuff you could do is just endless. And that's what this community and this show is all about. When I start these things, I have no idea really where this is going to go. And of course, with interactions with the community and with interactions with people in my videos and things like that, lots of people come up with some weird and crazy ideas that will work very, very well. It's not for everybody sometimes, but, you know, you can always learn something from everything. And that's why I subscribe to so many different channels, and so many channels of different aspects of crafting. So not just the crafting community that we're in, but, you know, model railroads and diorama people and mini painting people and people who just do like home hobby stuff for kids, you know, so cold porcelain and things like that. I want to do a video on cold porcelain, which is very cheap and easy to do. The only problem with it is it shrinks in size, so you don't want to make anything where the size has to be exact. But cold porcelain is very, very cool, very cheap, very easy to make. That is going to be a DMG's Lab video. I'm on the road all the time on a truck, so no room for that type of thing. Alright, yeah. So, yeah, then it's, you know, if you... What you can also consider is, rather than building everything with 1-inch squares, make it even smaller than that. So, like, the entire dungeon fits in a pizza box. I've been experimenting with pizza box dungeon builds, where you basically can fit the entire dungeon layout in a pizza box, and the characters are like little pins, and you can move them, you know, through, and there's like you've got like a pin board or cork at the bottom, and you can kind of move them through the dungeon, and you're essentially just painting the dungeon layout into this base, so you can carry that with you. And you've got the little monsters is just a really tiny thing you can attach to the head of the pin, to the back of the pin. And there you go. you don't have a huge amount of stuff you got to carry with you. You can make it even smaller. So, you know, down to, instead of 28 millimeter, it's like 3 millimeter scale. And then, of course, you know, then you can make much larger dungeons because you don't have to take up as much space, because you're not constrained to the 1 inch is 5 foot. You know, now it's like 1 millimeter is 5 foot. Millimeter is very, very small. Yeah, a ton of paints, airbrushes, and tools in the house, but we are never there. Yeah, being on the road is problematic. But that's why the technology now, actually using the technology to game remotely, my players have all moved away, so they're either at that different side of the city or in different cities entirely. And the internet technology and the streaming capabilities allows us to play when we wouldn't be able to play. So definitely consider streaming as an option to continue your game going, because then it's not like everyone has to, you know, find a lift and try to get to someone's house or whatever. They can do it from the comfort of their own home. They just have to be there on time, that's all. My real problem is when I game with people overseas is because we're in a weird time zone in Australia where most of the English-speaking world is on the other side of the planet. So, you know, the bulk of my audience is in a completely different time zone. So that's where scheduling games becomes problematic. It's Friday for you, Saturday for me. Sunday for you is Monday for me. So, you know, if it's great if there's a long weekend and there's, you know, the Monday I get off, because then I can game with people on their Sunday. But otherwise, it's a problem. What do you think about covering cotton with clear glue and making it a fungus to cover your terrain that traps the PCs? Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of cool things you can do with cotton. Not only just, you know, the smoke that I've used it for in my fire video, but it's very good for texturing things, and also as wadding. So, because it's light. So a lot of the time, you know, the people will say, why are you using tin foil? Why are you using? Because it's light. And it's easy to manipulate. I've seen people use cotton wool for trees, and a lot of, if you use like white glue mixed with cotton wool and then tease it a little bit, you may actually get quite a decent looking, I mean, not going to be the best, but a decent looking tree. And if you, once that's hardened a little bit and you roll that through some flock, you're going to get that sort of bulkiness of the tree that you get from the cotton ball, and the look of the leaves from the flocking that's on it. But you'd have to experiment. I mean, everything, you know, it depends on what you want it to look like. You know, to me, if I'm putting it on the table, it has to be functional as well. So my trees are cardboard trees where people can actually stand on the, excuse me, can actually stand on the leafy branches. So that's why I do that in my videos. While I like well-created, good-looking, realistic trees, from a practical standpoint, it's just there as fluff, really. Could be interesting using shadow puppetry and get some shadows in a game, or a shadow demon. Yes, absolutely. That's, you know, there's a lot you can experiment with that, especially if you have a cardboard cutout where you cut out the eyes and put some like red plastic transparent backing. So when you have the shadow puppet, it has red glowing eyes. That would be cool. Someone should try that out and take a photo and share it on Facebook. Just remember, DMG trademark. Yeah, in Sleepy Hollow, there was one with witches on there. That one with spirits. It would be a cool thing for a dungeon contact. Yeah, I mean, there's... But even so, even if you've got a town crowd scene, you've just got cutouts of the tops of people that you can kind of just move in front of the light in order to create street scenes. And then if you're using Sirenscape, you've then got the crowd noise sound. So, you know, you just sit that thing in front of the light, so it gives you all the crowd there, and then, you know, then you have a crowd scene, and then you don't really have to worry about it until you change the scene. So you're basically creating these cutouts that create a shadow scene on the wall or on a nearby surface. Yeah, you can, there's a lot that you'd be able to do with that. I have an email address. It's Gareth, Gareth, at thedmg.info. thedmg.info. That is my email address. If you want, you can check under YouTube, under About. It is business email. You click on that, it'll give you the same email address. Spammers are not welcome, but crafters are. Anyway, it has been an hour. Thank you very much for everyone who's joined us from all over the world on the various different platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Periscope, etc. I will get to answering any Facebook comments if there are any at a later stage. Thank you for joining me from wherever in the world that you are. In future, if you do wish to join the live stream, we are on Friday, the 4th Friday of every month at 8 p.m. Eastern, US Eastern. That will continue with daylight savings and all that kind of stuff. We will adjust the time zones accordingly, but that is the time that will be the publicized time of when the stream actually starts. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for supporting the craft. If you'd like to support this channel and what I do, you can go to thedmg.info, and there is a web store where you can buy products, including DVDs of the videos that I've done, and also the module Under the Tavern, which is on this channel as well. If you're into new and strange role-playing games, check out my other channel, 7D System, which is 7dsystem.com or youtube.com/7dsystem. That is the RPG that I have written, which is about to come out. We're in the final stages of putting the rules together, and I'd like to thank the patrons from 7D System that also help assist in making this financially possible. In terms of equipment and also the costs of running the streams and doing all that kind of stuff, advertising the game and all that sort of thing. So once again, thank you for joining me. I hope to see you next time, and hopefully before then we will see more DMG videos hitting the channel.